Hi, David. Can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Hello, my name is David. I'm from Taiwan. I'm now a medical resident in Brookdale Hospital.
How do you come here?
Well, after I finished my medical school, I came here for my master's in public health and postdoctoral fellowship in Harvard Chan School. And then I matched into medical residency here in the United States.
When and why did you start to practice Falun Dafa?
It's my last year in medical school. I came across a tourist spot in Taiwan. I saw some people meditate. I was kind of curious, what are they doing there? So I just go online and search for myself. And then I came across this book called Falun online, and it's free. And I took a look and read, and I find it's very interesting. I mean, it answers a lot of questions in my life I've always wanted to know. And I tried to apply the principles it talked about there into my own life, and I find myself more at ease. I'm still a little bit anxious, but it improves. Yeah.
As a medical resident, how do you think about the science and spiritual things faith?
I think for me personally, it's not much a contradiction. I know a lot of my colleagues in medical residency also believes in spirituality. And I think if you look into the history, like Newton, Leibniz, like all the earliest scientists, what we call, they're also very pious people. So from that point, I don't think there is contradiction. It's that now, as we develop more and more into the theories of science, people sort of lose this courage to step out of the comfort zone of current theories. And I think that it is ultimately what's the observed phenomenon, what you experience, that is most important, instead of what the theories contradict. Like, for example, a physics theorist called Richard Feynman, he said you don't curb your observations into your theory, but you should improve your theories after you see something that you cannot explain.
Do you have any special stories you can share with us during your medical career?
Well, I think one of the stories I remember now is that during my clinical rotation in Taiwan, there was a suicidal patient who was admitted because she wanted to kill herself, right? And during her stay, one day when I was following my attending doctor to see the patient, she was just as if renewed. She became very happy. And the attending said, what happened to you? Why did you change? And she said, someone gave me a new book. I read it and it's just changed my life. And the doctor said, what is that? What is it about? And she said, it's called Falun. After I read this book, I saw the Falun emblem. I visually saw that. And because she was a psychiatric patient, and what her described like a new onset in psychiatry, we would probably be alerted by that symptom. So the attending doctor kept her for 2 or 3 days and make sure that she's okay. And she was indeed okay, she just somehow got better out of her baseline condition. And then she was discharged 3 days afterwards. I never see her again, but that was during my earliest times when I started practice Falun Dafa. I said, interesting, because the same thing happened very similarly to me. I mean, after I read the book of Falun, I just felt, you sort of look at things differently. The things that happen in life, and to less resentment, and just more appreciate what I have, and just appreciate I was able, to practice and to still being on this world with my daily lives. I really appreciate that.
Nowadays, many people are suffering from anxiety, depression, and trauma. Have you seen anything very unique that Falun Dafa can help to solve these problems?
Well, I guess from my point of view, I don't think that the Falun Dafa is some goal-oriented to solve any particular problem. But from my own experience and the friends who practice, there is a very obvious feature that we become happier people after we practice. So I guess, if it would be helpful for people who could try at least just to look into the book and see how it says. I hope it will help you as much as it helped me.
Since you come from Taiwan, but the Falun Dafa situation in Taiwan between China is totally different. How do you think about this, the persecution in China?
Well, I guess that's a question hold dear to my heart too, because, I used to have a lot of Chinese friends. I traveled to China a lot before I practiced Falun Dafa, and I had some friends. And it was during that time I realized the stories that portrayed in China about Falun Dafa is very different from my own experience. And when I see the content online, I said, how come there's so big difference? So I want to tell my friends in China more about that, because I think that during this, internet age, it's that a lot of times people just get information from online and they never get to see the people in person. And I think that's the most important part, like not to stigmatize or to defame anyone before you truly know who they are. I think that's an important point. So I hope, Chinese people could know more about Falun Dafa, really to talk with these people, see for yourself, right? To compare what you see and in person versus what you see online.
Now the CCP has launched lots of transnational suppression campaign against Shen and Falun Gong in the U.S. through media, social media, and lawfare. Can you tell us more about this?
Well, actually, it happens also to even my relatives. Actually, one day I was talking to one of my relatives here in the U.S., and she was about my age, actually, but she grew up in the U.S. So I was just talking with her about Falun Gong. She did not know I practiced, and just halfway through the discussion, she said, well, isn't that like a cult thing? And I was surprised. I just said, well, I mean, how do you came to this conclusion? And she said, well, I saw on the social media that was talking about Falun Gong, said that, they burned themselves or something. Well, and then at that point I said, well, do I look like a cult member? Because I'm a practitioner of Falun Gong. And that was what she thought was surprising. And during my stay in Harvard Chan School, I do came across some of the Chinese classmates. They have some misunderstanding about Falun Gong because of what they were exposed in China. So, I do think that was something alarming. I try to explain when I can, and most of them, they could understand it like, oh, so it's just sort of hard because back in China, the media, the social media, it's sort of like a closed system, and anything that the government does not want to be exposed can be just filtered out. And people sort of just accept the government's narrative as something, the only truth. And so I just hope that people could have more person-to-person interaction. If there's less misunderstandings, the world could be a better place.
Shen is very popular around the world, but now is it facing lawsuits in the U.S. Can you tell us more about this?
Well, I don't know much about the details of the lawsuits, but I do know that some of the prestigious media in the U.S. start to launch media articles on Shen Yun that I find very drastically different from my own experience. I can share you a story about, when I came across the articles, they mentioned something about child labor accusations, which I find very bizarre. They said, oh, these practicum students, they're not paid and they're overworked. I find that bizarre because myself, I'm also, when I was in Harvard Chan School and doing my practicum, I was also overworking. Nobody was paying me. Sometimes I sleep in the lab, unfortunately, but it's an honor, to be able to work in a very prestigious lab. I try to work hard, try to learn as much as I can. And I find, when I was doing volunteering work for the Shen group, when they came to our cities and perform, I get to closely, not to say interact, but to observe these performers. And I do feel this sense of honor in them. They're very hardworking, they're very optimistic, and they practice a lot, that's for sure. And it's a highly demanding job. they have this sense of determination I see in them, and that's what impressed me. So to frame that in like being like child labor accusations, I think it's unfair. For one, I was also a public health instructor in Feitian College, Middletown. At one point, one of my part-time students, she was also an MC in Shen Performing Arts. She was a very determined person, very hardworking, and she liked what she did. I believe that from the observation, I did not see any of what the New York Times has been depicting. So that's I find very strange, actually. It's a strange cherry-picking of individuals that I find I just walk into a parallel world. I don't see the Shen they depict in my own experience. Another thing I just thought about is like during the articles they said some of the performers they're accusing that they're forbidden from going to hospitals or to seek healthcare professionals, which I find also not true. I mean, during my clinical experience in US where I prepare for my residency match, I was doing my clinical experience in Middletown in New York. It's called Northern Medical Center. And I stayed there for 2 months, and I do see like 2-3 Shen performers seeking healthcare. So they are allowed to see healthcare professionals. I saw people attending for psychiatric care, for outpatient, primary care. I see them. So I don't know why they frame it that way, but it's sometimes I would explain to my colleagues and classmates around me like what I see. Right? I do believe that first-hand experience is the most powerful one. Nowadays in media, I would say that the journalistic ethics is something to keep in mind. Anything we say or do has impact on society.
There are more than 450 million Chinese people has quit CCP and its affiliated organizations, and near 5 million international people signed the petition of End the CCP campaign. How do you think about this?
I think it's a creative way, very creative way, and very genius, actually, to solve this problem the most peaceful way possible. If people withdraw, they understand the evils, what CCP has done, and withdraw from them, then this party no longer exists. I think it's best for not for only for Chinese people, but for people around the world. I was talking to my Chinese colleague about, the Cultural Revolution, because my grandfather, from my mother's side, actually got persecuted during the Cultural Revolution. His entire family was gone. He was the only one who came to Taiwan. When I talked about it, my Chinese colleague said, "Oh, her grandfather also had the exact same thing." Other friends, I know elderly friends who said that she did not realize that her father was a victim of Chinese Cultural Revolution until she was 40 years old, like her mother told her. And I think this kind of hidden trauma was so prevalent among Chinese people, and that people were very careful not to upset the authority, not to think or talk in ways that are forbidden by the government, and that causes a lot of tragedies, actually. And I do think that if people were able to understand these traumas, not to retaliate, but just to know what exactly is happening, and hopefully these tragedies would not happen in the human history ever again. Yeah.
Today we are gathering here to have candlelight to commemorate the July 20th for 26 years. Do you have any message you want to say to the government, the U.S. community, or international community?
I think that's what's worry about me is that people in the U.S. often don't know the severity of this persecution that's happening in China. I myself, I did not know until that there was a Harvard visiting scholar who interviewed some of my elderly friends, and they talked about what happened to them in the jails in China. And it was dumbstruck, like it was very severe human rights abuse. So I would say that to U.S. people that cherish the freedom you have, because it is precious. It's like this kind of freedom is not guaranteed in some places in the world. And I think the most worrisome is that people don't know that they're losing it. If people could know about it, perhaps we could do something about it.
What we can do, or the international community can do more to bring more awareness to this issue to help the stop of the persecution of Falun Gong?
I really don't know, actually, because when I was in Harvard, and I tried to grasp opportunities to talk to professors or big business CEOs, it surprised me that actually quite a few people already know about the crimes of persecution of Falun Gong and forced organ harvesting. They know about it. They know this crime is still ongoing, but it takes courage to actually do something when your company is at stake, when your company's profit is at stake. Are you willing to sacrifice actually to protect human rights and to stop this crime? It takes courage, actually.
What the U.S. and the international community can do to help more to stop the persecution of Falun Gong?
I think that the current bill that is trying to vote in the Senate and the Congress about the Falun Gong Protection Act is a very good way to support. Because if it's going to legislation, and I think this is the first time in legislation in the U.S. History that has solid actions on the perpetrators of this human rights abuse. Previously, the U.S. government has passed several resolutions, but there is no solid consequences for these perpetrators. And this time, the Falun Gong Protection Act, first passed by the bipartisan support in the last administration, and also this administration, I think in the Congress, that really helps. Right, to promote awareness and to let people know that this, things such as forced organ harvesting, this is terrible human rights abuse. It's not accusation, it's a fact. People need to know that. And it's an ongoing fact that we have to stop it. I once talked to, a Korean hepatologist in my class in Harvard Chan School. I talked to her about that and she said, oh, this makes so much sense to me now, why the Chinese hepatologist surgeons, general surgeons have such good data on whole liver transplant. Their data are very perfect. Whole liver transplant is supposed to be a scarce data source. And by explaining to her about forced organ harvesting, she realized that. And I think that's something we could all do, just to talk, share with that, discuss with your colleagues, talk with your friends about it, what you know. If you have known people who practice Falun Gong, talk to them. What happened to you? Why did you decide to step in and to raise awareness about this human rights issue? Before I don't know about it, I may walk on the street, but now I'm talking here, right? So what happens? These people are not like brainwashed or very stupid. They have their own lives. Why do they decide to do that? And I think just by knowing more each other, I think a lot of misunderstanding could just be resolved. And the world could be a better place, actually. Yeah.
Today is July 20th. Do you have anything you want to say the Falun Gong practitioners in China who are still suffering but standing for their faith?
I think keep up to spread the truth. I truly admire what you did and hope you could keep on. Without the practitioners in China and also in the world to talk about this persecution and to stand up against it, I would never had the opportunity to practice Falun Dafa myself. So for that, I'm really grateful for these people and keep up the good work.